In this video, we're going to take a look at the Pluck Oscillator within Falcon 2. And to describe the Pluck Oscillator, I'm just going to quote the manual directly. And it states that Pluck is a physically inspired string synthesis module aimed toward creating synthetic sounds with a natural decay. So if you're interested in creating and experimenting with your own plucked and string sounds, then this is what you can check out, the Pluck Oscillator. And you can also use this for different sound design techniques as well, which maybe we'll take a look at in a later video. And one good way to help you understand the different parameters in the Pluck Oscillator and how they affect your sound would be to go through some of the presets and just pay attention to how they have made their adjustments and settings within those presets. You can access those in the upper right hand corner here where it says default. By clicking, we can see we have a few different sections for harmonics, pluck, sustained, and synth. And let's actually just take about 60 seconds to go through a couple of these presets just to get a better idea of some of the sounds that the Pluck Oscillator can create. Okay, so that's just a little sampling of some of the sounds that the Pluck Oscillator can create and some of the presets. And just keep in mind that these are basic presets that have no effects applied to them, and also that we could add other oscillators that are available within Falcon to help make our patch a bit more in-depth and interesting. But for now, let's come up to the top and go back to our default setting and jump into taking a look at the different parameters here that will allow us to help shape our sound. Now let's start with the mixer, because I think this will help to better understand how Pluck works when we take a look at this. So these are going to control the levels for the different oscillators that we have here. We have the sample oscillator that's coming from the sample player here. We have the synth, and we have noise. So if I take the sample level all the way down, our noise is all the way down, and when I trigger this, we can hear the synth sound is a pitched oscillator that resembles a sine. And let's take this one down, and the next one that we have is noise. And the noise oscillator will introduce higher harmonics to our sound for more of a plucked string sound. And finally, we have the sample, which is going to control the level for the sample that we've loaded in our sample player here to the left. Now, the sample that we choose is really going to affect the decay and timbre of our sound, the quality of it. So if we take a look at the drop-down menu here, we can see that from the included audio samples we can load, I think this illustrates just how the type of audio sample you load will affect your sound. So if we'd like a sharper attack and quick decay to our sound, we could start with the attack folder here. So let's take our noise and synth up a bit here, and let's listen to this. We don't have a sample loaded. So we've already got a quick attack on here, but if we come back to the drop-down menu and the attack, and let's just choose the dulcimer here and raise the level for that sample. We can use the left and right arrows here to move on to the next sample. Now, if we come back to our drop-down menu and choose Bode or Brush, then this is going to definitely change the character of our pluck sound. Okay, and just finally, let's take a look at the metal. So if you're looking for a metallic sort of character to your sound, if we choose the coin string here, and so I just wanted to go through these to really highlight how the particular type of sample that you load into here is going to affect the overall character of your pluck sound. Now we can also load our own samples into the sample player by click, hold, and dragging an audio file onto the waveform display. So we could do that within the browser within Falcon or using an Explorer or Finder window on the Mac. So I'm just going to click, hold, and drag the sample onto the top of the window. And as you can see, it replaces the previous sample. So I'm going to take the sample level down. Actually, let's bring our noise up. And so those are our synth and noise oscillators on their own. Then as I bring in the sample oscillator, we can definitely hear how that sample is affecting the character and decay of our sound. Within our sample display window, we have start and end markers. So if we would like to really focus on a specific area of a sample that we brought in, then we can choose to do that. I'll pull these out a little bit. Let's take the start marker back to the beginning. And we also have a start position. So if I were to increase this by 50% basically and move our end marker all the way back out, we should start around the center of our sample. So you have that available to you as well. We can actually detune our audio sample. So lowering it will lower the pitch, of course, and also play back slower. Raising it will increase the pitch and play back quicker. So this is a parameter that could be useful for doing some sound design work, because that's going to change the feel and character of your sound quite a bit. Let's actually move our start marker in a bit to the beginning of the waveform, and I'm going to turn the dual delay on here. And so a completely different feel when we take the detuning up to a higher pitch. Okay, I'm going to hold Alt and click on the detuning to take that back to the default. We then have key follow, and this will allow you to control the higher frequencies of your sound based on if you're playing higher or lower notes on the keyboard. So if you increase this, say all the way to the maximum of 100%, then your higher notes are going to have more higher frequency content. Then as you play lower on your keyboard, those higher frequencies should be a bit more muted. We then have an interpolation mode. By default, this is going to be on standard, and the manual says that this is going to be good for most instances. But if we click on that, we can choose from lo-fi or best. In the bottom left corner, we have brightness, and this is pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to take the sample level down and just listen to our synth and noise oscillator so we can hear this clearly. It's going to make your sound brighter. Okay, and then we have noise, and this is going to add a longer sustain or decay to your noise oscillator. So Let's go ahead and activate that. And so this is only affecting our noise oscillator. If I were to take that volume down and we just hear our synth oscillator, then let's take the release down a bit. It's not really affecting that. Okay, now if we bring the noise back in, and it is still making use of the release here though. And here in the amp envelope. So this does need to be up in order to make use of that sustain. So this could be another setting that would be good for doing some experimentation with sound and sound design, but for now let's take that off. And the next thing we have is pick filter. This is going to be on by default, and this changes the character of your pluck sound. Moving the position knob to the right will give you a softer, more round pluck, and the depth just kind of controls how much. It's like a dry wet blend of how much of this character we want. So to hear this clearly, I'm going to take the depth all the way up to 100%, and let's start our position at the very left. So you can hear how that gets a bit more round and fuller, and a bit more twangy to the left. I'll hold Alt-click to take these back to the defaults. We next have a contour section, and this control allows us to further shape the character of our sound. So it would be best to use your ears for the shape parameter in particular. So we get a more buzzy sound to the right. And almost a bit of drive, it seems. We then have roll off, so this is going to set a cutoff for our pluck sound. You can see those are here, that the higher frequencies are being attenuated. Now finally, the dynamics. This is going to allow you to set how your high frequencies will be attenuated based on how hard or soft you're playing. So this is velocity based. So if we set this to the extreme at 30 dB, how this should work is that as I play soft, the higher frequency content will be a bit more muted, and as I press the key or pad harder, then those higher frequencies will open back up. So I'll trigger softly first, then as I play harder, let me turn the full level mode off on my controller here. So softly. So you can hear how those higher frequencies open up as the velocity level increases on my controller. Okay, moving on, we have a string section, and to the left we have finger. So the first parameter in this section, harmonic ratio, this is going to introduce an additional harmonic note to your sound. So let's just start off really subtly, and you can already hear a big difference. Now when we take this up, you can hear how that changes. Now with a setting of 2, this would be adding a harmonic note that's exactly 1 octave above your bass note, just so you have a frame of reference. We then have stretch, and this will increase the length of your sound, your harmonic note, to give you a more buzzing sound. And we would need to take our release up again. Over to the right in our tuning and coupling section, we can add a second string to our Pluck Oscillator and choose how it interacts with your initial string by using this section here. So if we come to strings and click the drop down, we can choose 2. So now we've added a second string for whenever we trigger a key or pad on our controller. The coupling mode is going to determine how those 2 strings interact with each other. And this section would just be good to experiment with and use your ears to learn a bit more about how those are going to affect your sound. And I'm going to turn the stereo mode on just so this is a bit more clear. So we have coarse and fine tuning to tune that second string that was added relative to our initial. So as I increase, I'm playing the same pad on my controller, but you can hear how that second string is being increased in semitones. So then we have fine tuning, which is going to be in cents. You can adjust up to 20. And let's just check out a couple of the other modes. This is going to put the 2 strings in serial mode, so one after the other. We have bridge, which we just heard, beating, and enharmonic. We have an additional control for this. And we have coupling to determine how much of the effect we're going to be applying. Okay, and finally we have the decay section down at the very bottom here. And as the name implies, it will allow you to set the decay and release time for your pluck, as well as some of its frequency content, the frequency content in that decayed signal. Now, some of the available parameters here will change depending on the decay type that you have selected, but in the default LP1, all of the parameters will be available for use. So we have basic decay and release. And as we've seen earlier, let's change this back to bridge. As we've seen earlier, these are going to work in tandem with the release time here. So if I take the release in our amp envelope down and take our release time all the way up here, we're not going to hear that change because our release is down here. So just remember, you need to increase your release time in the amp envelope in order to get the changes that you make up here to work. Okay, that's decay and release. We then have a brightness, and this is, similar to the synth section that we heard earlier. This is just going to allow you to adjust the brightness of the decayed signal in particular. We have a cutoff. So moving to the left, we cut higher frequencies out of our decayed signal. We then have bridge loss, and this applies dampening to your decay to allow you to achieve a more realistic decay if you're trying to emulate the behavior of a plucked string instrument. And as I mentioned, what filter type you are using here will determine what controls are available in this section, but it can also give you a different effect to the decay of your sound, and it's something that you can always experiment with to hear or to get the sound that you're looking for. So by default, this will be on LP1. Okay, and so that is the Pluck Oscillator within Falcon. I hope that you've picked up some useful tips from this video, and I will see you in the next tutorial.